my name is Aaron Walsh. I'm 32 years old, a captain in the United States Army. And right now, I'm standing outside my sister's wedding in full dress uniform, holding a plain white envelope and waiting for nothing. I wasn't invited. No one asked me to come. I'm not even sure anyone in there remembers I exist, but I came anyway, not to make a scene, not to demand a place, just to deliver something. Something I've carried longer than most people carry: grief. The church doors are wide open. Laughter spills out. People in suits and dresses pass by without a second glance. A few notice the uniform, maybe nod politely, but none of them realize who I am, or why I'm here. There's no anger in me anymore. That part burned out a long time ago. What's left is quieter, heavy but still, like the weight of a rucksack after the adrenaline fades. I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm not here to ask for anything at all. The envelope in my hand is thick. The corners are worn from how many times I've looked at it and put it away. I told myself I wouldn't come. I told myself it didn't matter. But when I woke up this morning and realized what day it was, I knew I had to be here. Not for them. For me, for what I needed to lie down, for what she deserved to know. I adjust my collar, take a breath, and wait. Just one more minute. Then I'll do what I came to do, and I'll leave. Just like I always do. Quietly. Without expecting anyone to look back. Growing up, my sister and I were close. Closer than most siblings, probably. She was 3 years younger, always tagging along, always asking questions about the stars, the world, and how far we could go if we ran fast enough. Back then, I was her hero. She used to draw pictures of us together. I'm in a cape, she on my shoulders, both of us smiling like nothing could ever pull us apart. But that version of us didn't survive adulthood. Our parents always had a vision. Prestige, law school, corporate titles, country clubs. They never said it outright, but it was clear. The path to being someone in our family didn't include uniforms and combat boots. So when I enlisted, I didn't just disappoint them, I embarrassed them. I still remember the night I told them. We were sitting around the table. My mother was slicing chicken, and my father was checking his phone. I waited until dessert, like that would somehow make it easier. When I said the words, my mother froze. My father looked at me like I'd announced a crime. He didn't yell. He never did. His words were soft, almost rehearsed. You're a soldier now? That's what you want? Son, you're a grunt with a gun. That's not a future. We don't need that in this family. No one spoke after that. My sister looked down at her plate. She was old enough to understand, but too scared to speak up. And I don't blame her. Back then, we were all still trying to survive in that house in our own ways. The distance grew quickly. I'd write from basic training, get no reply. I came home for Thanksgiving one year and found my room turned into a guest office. The family smiled through dinner like nothing had happened. But it had. Something had split, and no one wanted to admit it. My sister drifted too. I watched her grow into the mold they shaped for her: private schools, polished manners. Dating the kind of guys our parents approved of. When I showed up to her college graduation in uniform, she asked me to wait outside until after the ceremony. She said it was better that way. I didn't argue. I stopped showing up after that, not out of spite, just because it hurt less to stay away than to be told I didn't belong. Still, there were moments. Tiny ones. A message on my birthday. A forwarded photo from Mom, showing my sister smiling at some gala. I kept them all. I read into them like a starving man looking for crumbs. Maybe she missed me. Maybe not enough to say it, but enough to remember I was still somewhere out there. Now, standing outside her wedding, all of that feels so far away. The childhood memories. The scraped knees. The laughter in tree forts. It's like watching a home you once lived in get torn down to build something shinier. But even now, after everything, I don't hate them. Not her. Not our parents. I just wish they'd seen me for more than the uniform. For the kid I was. For the man I became. Because the truth is, I never stopped being her big brother. Even when they stopped calling me family. The air was thick with dust and fire when the call came through. We were pinned behind a busted truck frame, taking cover from a barrage that hadn't let up for 30 minutes. The radios were a mess. Static, overlapping voices, garbled commands. But one came through clear. A soldier was down, exposed, bleeding out by the eastern wall of the compound. No one moved. That stretch was a death zone. Open ground, no cover, a graveyard if you weren't lucky. But I didn't think. I just moved. I broke from cover and ran low, boots hammering against the packed sand, heat clinging to my gear like a second skin. Bullets snapped past like angry bees. I dropped to my belly halfway, crawled the last 30 feet through broken concrete and blood-streaked dirt until I reached him. He was young. It couldn't have been more than 20. Pale from blood loss, lips blue, uniform soaked red at the chest. He looked at me, eyes wide with fear, and tried to speak. I couldn't hear over the shelling, but I leaned in close. His voice was thin, ragged, just a name, a girl, maybe. Then he went still. I grabbed him under the arms and started dragging. Every inch felt like a mile. I could feel my legs shaking, but I didn't stop. I didn't let go until we were back behind the barrier, and the medics were pulling him from my hands. That night, I cleaned the blood from my vest. It had soaked through everything. I found his ID tag tangled in my glove, Private L. Daniels. I didn't think twice about the name. It didn't mean anything then. Just another soldier. Another life pulled back from the edge because that's what we do. We don't rescue names. We rescue people. I wrote the field report. I logged the coordinates. Then I folded his tag into a small canvas pouch I carry for things like that. Not souvenirs. Reminders of choices, of moments that stay with you long after the noise fades. There was no glory in it. No one gave a speech. No one called it brave. It was just the job. And I did it because someone had to. Because if that had been me out there, bleeding in the sand, I'd have prayed someone would come. And that night, I did. A few weeks after I got back stateside, I was sitting in my truck outside a diner, killing time between appointments at the VA, when I decided to check social media. I don't use it much, but sometimes I scroll through my sister's page, quietly, just to see how she's doing. That day, she'd posted an engagement photo. She in a white dress, he in a sharp navy suit, both smiling like life had never touched them. The caption said, "Soon to be Mrs. Liam Daniels." The name stopped me cold. I read it twice. Then a third time, Liam Daniels. I knew that name, not from family stories or holiday dinners, but from a war zone, from a slab of metal soaked in blood, pressed into my palm while a kid bled out in the dirt. I pulled out the canvas pouch I kept in my glove compartment. The tag was still there, Private L. Daniels. I didn't want to believe it, so I started digging. Backtracked his posts. Found military references, recovery photos, and posts thanking anonymous medics. It all lined up. Same man, same survivor, same kid I dragged through hell to get home. And now, he was marrying my sister. I tried calling. The number was blocked. I messaged. No response. I emailed our parents. Nothing. Finally, I sent my sister a single sentence. I saved his life. Her reply came 10 minutes later. "You don't belong here. You're just a charity case in uniform, begging for attention. Stay gone." That one cut deeper than anything I'd seen overseas. Not because it was cruel, but because it meant she hadn't changed. Or maybe she had. Maybe this was who she'd become all along and I'd just never seen it. I stared at her message for a long time. I didn't answer. What could I say that wouldn't sound like a plea? I folded the tag back into the pouch, drove home in silence, and for the first time in years, I felt like I didn't know who I'd saved. But I knew why I did it, because that's what we do. We don't ask who they are, we don't ask who they'll become, we just go. And sometimes, when we come back, we find out the people we thought we knew have become strangers with familiar names. The church was small, white-bricked, and framed by rose bushes in full bloom. Music drifted out through the open doors. Guests milled around the entrance in soft suits and pastel dresses, laughing like this was the beginning of something sacred. I stood across the street in full uniform, watching the way joy moves when it thinks no one's looking. No one saw me. Not really. A few guests glanced over, probably thought I was on some security detail or passing through. No one came up, no one asked if I had a reason to be there. I didn't expect them to. The envelope in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Inside was everything I had left to give. Not anger, not guilt, just the truth. Something raw and honest, meant for the one person who needed to see it most, even if she'd never ask for it. I wasn't there to ruin anything. This day was hers, her dress, her vows, her happily ever after. I didn't want a seat. I didn't want a toast. I didn't want to be remembered. I just came to finish what I started on that sand-covered field so far from here. A part of me thought maybe she'd see me. Maybe her eyes would catch mine through the crowd. But that moment never came. And in some quiet, unspoken way, I was relieved. Some things don't need confrontation, they just need closure. The wind picked up a little, tugging at the edges of the invitation banner above the church. I adjusted my collar, breathed deep, and stepped closer to the entrance. I stayed on the edge. Always the edge. I was never part of that world. Not anymore. But today, I wasn't here to be included. I was here to keep a promise I made under fire to a boy bleeding out beneath a broken wall. And I intended to keep it. He looked about 10, maybe 11. Hair slicked, clip-on tie crooked, cheeks already smudged with frosting from the dessert table. He reminded me of my sister at that age. Curious, bold, still untouched by how cold people can be when they think you're no longer useful. I knelt beside him, handed him the envelope, and said, "This is for the bride, just the bride." He nodded like it was a game, then ran off, skipping over cracks in the sidewalk as he disappeared through the church doors. I didn't follow. I just stood there, hands behind my back, watching from across the street. Inside that envelope were 3 things. A folded letter, the kind you write when you think you won't make it out. Liam had scrawled it in blood-smeared ink during the blackout before the medevac. I found it in his vest when I checked for wounds. It was addressed simply, "If I don't make it." The second item was half a dog tag, cracked and scorched at the edge. I'd carried it ever since that day, more out of habit than intention. The third was a note, mine. I kept it short. To the bride. The life you're receiving today was paid for by blood, in a place you'll never see. Ask him who saved him, and what that cost me. That was all. I watched her open it from a distance. She was standing near the altar, veil tilted back, bouquet in one hand, the other holding the envelope like it had just whispered her name. She read the first few lines of Liam's letter, and I saw her lips part. Her hands began to shake, her eyes scanned faster, like she couldn't believe what they were saying. Then she froze. The dog tag slipped from her fingers and clinked against the floor. Someone called her name, maybe the groom, maybe her mother, but she didn't move. She just stood there, locked in place, staring at something far heavier than ink and paper. I didn't need to see more. I turned and walked back toward the sidewalk, step by step, breath steady. Let the letter speak. Let the past walk in and introduce itself. The truth doesn't need a spotlight. Sometimes it only needs a boy in a tie, a silent walk, and a moment when everything you thought you knew turns out to be something else entirely. I was halfway down the block when I heard someone call my name. Not loud, not certain, like they weren't sure I'd still answer to it. I didn't turn around. Not yet. Behind me, I heard heels on pavement. Quick, uneven steps. Then a voice, cracked and shaking, calling me again. I saw her reflection in the side mirror of my truck before I saw her in real life. Her dress was wrinkled now, veil pushed back, face streaked with tears and makeup. She looked lost. She had the envelope clutched in one hand, the letter trembling in the other. But by the time she reached the street, I'd already closed the driver's side door. I didn't roll down the window. I didn't wave. I just looked at her once through the mirror and nodded. A goodbye without sound. Then I pulled away. She stood in the middle of the road, breathless, stunned. The church is behind her, the truth in her hands. The man she loved inside, the brother she forgot was driving away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt done. I kept my eyes on the road, hands steady on the wheel, the soft hum of the engine the only thing breaking the silence. But I glanced back one last time, just a quick look in the rear view. She was still there, watching, shrinking in the distance. That was when the thought hit me. Clear, clean, without bitterness. I was never meant to be a guest. I was meant to save the man you love, so you could have this day. That's all I ever was. A guardian no one remembered to thank. There are things in life you do not do for recognition, not for thanks, but because they are right. Because someone has to. Because deep down, even if no one else sees it, you know it matters. I didn't walk into that war expecting gratitude. I didn't save Liam Daniels because he was someone's fiancé. I saved him because he was bleeding and scared and calling for help. That was enough then. It's still enough now. People talk about family like it's unconditional. It holds no limits. But sometimes, love asks you to show up even when you're not wanted. To protect people who may never understand what it costs you, and you do it anyway. I've carried a lot in silence. Pain, distance. That kind of weight changes how you move in the world, but it also sharpens your clarity. Strips away what's shallow and leaves you only what's real. I never needed to sit in that church. I never needed a seat at the table or a place in the photographs. I just needed to know that she'd have her day, that she'd never have to know what it took to get there. That was always the point. Not glory, not recognition, just peace. And if I had to go back, if I found myself on that same battlefield again, staring down the same odds, knowing everything that would follow, I wouldn't hesitate. I'd run back into the fire. I'd drag him out. I'd carry him through every shot and scream. Because love doesn't ask for return, it gives. And it lets go. She didn't know. But I did. And that's enough.